Now, for more analysis on this story, we are joined in studio by political analyst Professor Susan Boyson and Professor Sipho Sepe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Now, Profs, this is very unprecedented. Can you just, what exactly is going on? What's happening?
I think like the rest of the nation or the world, we are on tenterhooks wondering what is exactly happening. We know the president is exercising the power that he has. Many people have pointed out that it is a demonstration of power while his power is actually lapsing. But he has got that formal state power. He remains the president. And he is firmly in control, it seems, of his top six, of the NEC until the next revolt. The previous revolt, end of November, had been subdued. So he has got that power and he demonstrates that. Whether he is on the verge of doing that serious, much expected cabinet reshuffle, or whether he is just trying to put Pravin Gordhan, Minister of Finance, in his place, this is exercise of power, and it also works in terms of what we think the broader scheme is, his self-preservation.
Professor Sepe, let's bring you in here. Professor Boyson had a lot to say just in terms of, the president demonstrating his power that is seemingly lacking. This is coming from some sides. What's your take on what happened today? Is it a show of power, show of force?
My take is very simple. You either have power or you don't have power. 1 minute he's got no power. The next thing, he's got power over his top six. He's got power over the NEC. He's got power on the ground. So I see this as really more our own creation of sorts. So but what often happens, once the president has served more than or almost going to the end of the second term, and especially when you are going to be stepping down as a president, and this president is going to step down from political power, you always find this notion of somebody losing and all that. But what we know is that come December, he'll no longer be the president of the ANC. At least that we know as a fact. And it may also be possible that if something happens which we are not seeing in the horizon, he might be recalled earlier. But I don't see, as we talk about the NEC, where it stands. And for as long as the president is a crowd puller on the ground, this is a president who, in the media, we have said that he has no support. But when he goes to rallies, when he goes to marquees that have a lot of people, you see a person who's embraced.
Prof, sorry just to come in there, but I just want us to focus on what happened today. So what are we looking at? We're not necessarily looking at the president's popularity, or is he doing well, or do people like him?
No, the point is,
we're looking at where does he stand and why was the decision made? Is it just a normal executive decision, come back home because we have things to discuss, or is there more to it? I think that's the crux of the question.
The first is, if you thought he has no power, he has just exercised it to say, I can call any minister. And given that there are people who have created an impression that two centers of power, I simply want to indicate that they're not there. And the response of the Minister of Finance is also to say, Mr. President, I serve at your pleasure. And if you want me to come home, I'll come home. But also, most importantly, there are some people who are beginning to say, oh, of course, this is bad for the country. But Gordhan himself says, I was coming home anyway. I had almost concluded what I needed to do. So you could actually see it as, we don't know why the president has called the minister. But what we do is that we are people who tend to speculate. But I'm always fascinated about how 1 week the man is powerless, the next week the man is powerful.
Now, Professor Boyson, just coming in there, looking at, as Professor Sepe says, there's a lot of speculation. As he says, South Africans like to speculate. Is there a possible cabinet reshuffle?
It is definitely a possibility, yes, because we know there are serious animosities between the president and several of the cabinet members, and we know there are people in the waiting in the wings who are waiting and who need that kind of deployment and who are on the favorable side of the president. And we know that that cabinet reshuffle is a serious exercise of power by the president, but he cannot overplay his hand there. He has played out in previous years. He has really quite regularly reshuffled. He has not done it recently, and we know that is a serious card that he has to play, that he has in his hand, and that he can play. And now would actually be a good moment for him to play that, because he needs to prepare for elective conference. Certainly, he's going to be out of power formally by the end of the year. His networks are so well entrenched. So Zuma's faction have in effect become the ANC, and so he is well entrenched in there, and he is nurturing those networks. He is looking to deploy people into the cabinet who can help his favorite side, win come December and the ANC's National Elective Conference. So it is serious moves that he's making now, and he's playing his cards close to the chest, but he is playing them very strategically.
Interesting sentiments there. I mean, you know, the animosity that you speak of, but also the people that are waiting on the sidelines, hoping to be put onto the cabinet. Prof. Sepe, let's bring you in here. I mean, I saw your face as Prof. Boyson was speaking of the possible reshuffle. I mean, this is something that we spoke about last year already, where we thought it was going to happen and then it doesn't happen. Why do you think it could happen this time, and why is it critical for the president to make it happen?
Well, if you really want to sustain your influence post-December, you definitely would like to put people who are going to pay back in a way to say, thank you, Mr. President, for considering me. But you also want to make sure that you get rid of the people who have been a problem. Because once you're no longer having a political power, you might find that your state power will also be diminished. Remember, the President Thabo Mbeki, his power waned overnight once he was no longer having political power, or he was no longer the center of the ANC. Because you must also understand that even the President Zuma understands that he's in the sunset of his political life. But as we know, we have written so many obituaries, political obituaries of President Zuma, but he always comes up. But as Susan says, that he is a master in playing that game, and also making some false move, so that people fall into those false moves, and then he emerges. But what is true is that the cabinet shuffle will happen, but it will happen in President Zuma's time. He does not act when we expect it. He acts when we least expect it.
Now, Prof. Sepe, just going back to what you said earlier, the fact that comparing it to former President Thabo Mbeki's era and current President Zuma's era, there's a huge difference there, where back then there were two states of powers. There was the executive of the ANC, and there was government. So President Mbeki was in government and President Zuma was in the ANC leadership. So now, is this what you're saying, that President Zuma may possibly become a president of the ANC again?
No. We all agree that come December, he will no longer be the president of this country. So there will be that element of two centers of power. But how you manage it becomes very important. What the President Mbeki failed to do was to nurture the support within the NEC of the ANC, and also to nurture the support base. And what the ANC did show him is that you are there not because you are smart. You are there because we put you there. So President Zuma knows that mistake that was done, and it will be in his interest to make sure that the mistake is not repeated.
Prof, just to come in there, are you saying that President Zuma, with the possible reshuffle that may take place, we're not sure yet, as you say, he only makes a move when he's ready to make a move, are we likely to see the same thing in terms of the power base? Is this going to work in his favor, looking at the economic reaction from the world with regards to the rand depreciation that took place today, immediately when Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan was called back to the country? Is he? What exactly are we reading into this?
If Zuma has to make a decision, he'll make that decision. And the issue of, I always find it interesting how we always get excited about how the market reacts. I think we must also ask ourselves what type of country are we? There's issue of sovereignty. There's issue if the president acts within constitutional constraints, that is fine. But for the threat that we always put that if you do this, we're going to punish you. Then we're not a free country. Then we're still held hostage. So we need to find a situation where our institutions are strong, our policies are very clear. We should not have a situation where we have to depend on the behavior of one person.
Prof. Boyson, let's bring you in here. I saw you twitching as Prof. Siepe was speaking. But let's look at his statement first on, the power base, saying, you are not put there because you're smart, you're put there because you're there because we put you there. First of all, isn't that a mess, considering that you need to put the right people in the right position to take the country further? I think that's what everybody wants for South Africa. So do you think the president is now caught between trying to, hold on to that sense of power, obviously post the conference in December, but also making sure the country still runs because he is the president of the republic?
There are quite a few answers to that question. In the first place, he is exactly trying to prevent what happened to Thabo Mbeki to happen from him. He has been nurturing his own power base. His own people are so entrenched in the state structures. And he has got quite a hold on Parliament. Parliamentary caucus of the ANC has shown a few signs of shifting as well. But he has quite a hold on them. And I won't be surprised if he has been, and his people have been working on them continuously, like they have been working on the top 6, like they have been working on the NEC, to sustain that power base that he has. And so there is so much at stake for him in that. And what I find so interesting about the discussion we're having today about possible reshuffles, merit is almost not coming into the picture anymore. The dynamic here is who has antagonized the president, who has challenged him, who is on what on this new divide. It's I called it a few years ago in Opinion Piece, an age of unreason. What is rational? Who is the best performer in Parliament? Those are not necessarily people who will survive come that moment when the president makes his move and does his reshuffle. And of course, the longer he holds the cards back of not making the reshuffle, actually, the longer he retains that power that people try to please him. It could very well be that Pravin Gordhan is being called back because the Guptas had issued this demand in the High Court. It could very well be that. It could be that the president wants him personally to go into the parliamentary committees, which are to hear some evidence this week. The point is, however, the president cannot be seen to be siding that explicitly with the Guptas. That would damage, and that comes back to your question about what is good for the country. And if he had not known about any of these commitments that Pravin Gordhan had when he apparently appointed Naledi Pandor as acting Minister of Finance until Thursday this week, if he had not known all of this, he is not a good president.
Now, Prof, just to bring you in there, do you think South Africans sometimes get unnecessarily excited about things where we speculate and we just blow it out of proportion? Is this what's happening right now, or should we be worried, looking at what happened with the rand, of course, and looking at what's going to happen for the rest of the week, for example?
We are a very negative people, and we are easily excitable. And sometimes when I listen to the people in the media, you'll think that tomorrow is the end of South Africa. I mean, there was a time when we called ourselves a failed state, then we became a predatory state, we became all sorts of things. But South Africans majority continue with their lives and they continue hoping. But most importantly, I think, listen to Susan, and if we had members of the NEC and the members of cabinet, they'd be looking at us and say, what are you saying? This man is manipulating us. So sometimes we should not create a demigod around the man as a great manipulator. It could also be that some people are getting along the path because they want to be in that path. So I'm not sure that Kwede would want to accept that he's being manipulated. Maybe there is something in it for him. Maybe there is something in it for members of the NEC who continue to support the president. But what we know, he is a political survivor, and also that he does not act in a manner where things are not acting in his advantage. And what we see now is that instead of his power waning in the party, it is very strong. You see it in a number of provinces. When you remember when Mbeki stepped down or was forced, almost 9 provinces really did not want him. The people like Malema and others had worked the branches so well that when the NEC had to make a decision, it was an easy decision for them to make, that you're gone.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. In closing, Professor Boyson, your take on and what expectation should be. And as Prof. Siepe says, South Africans, we get too excited, we get too emotionally vested. What's your take? What do you think is likely to happen? And just looking at the Gupta case that will be taking place, and there's a lot of speculation. We still don't know exactly what's going on. Do you think President Zuma will come out and tell the country exactly what's going on?
In a way, he will. He's probably laughing in his sleeve right at the moment, and he will come out with some move. Nobody and no president can get away with doing this kind of intervention with possible huge. Already, we have seen it, and yes, there is a lack of ultimate sovereignty if we depend on markets and banks reacting. But this is a modern world in which we live, and this is the economic system which the government has also been endorsing. And the president cannot make a step like that and sit back and pretend nothing has happened, because the economy and economy feels it. Ordinary people in South Africa feel it.
Prof, thank you so much for joining us. This is such a multifaceted discussion. We wish we had more time, but that's where we'll have to leave it now. Those were political analysts Professor Susan Boyson and Professor Sipho Siepe sharing their insights on the recalling of Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan from his overseas